What's going on, guys? It's Adam P, and welcome back to more Newcastle United news. Huge day tomorrow. The biggest and most famous half marathon in the world is back in Newcastle. The Great North Run is on, and as already announced in my previous video, Jacob Murphy and Nick Putt will be the official starters this year. It's been described by the organisers for the first time ever. A North East winning football team will be presenting the Great North Run. So, of course, I am personally running in the race tomorrow. So there'll be a massive video of the entire race on the channel tomorrow. Of course, it is Newcastle United related. So that will be a full video up on the channel. I am running on behalf of the British Heart Foundation. So down in the pinned comment and my description, there will be a link to my fundraising page. If you possibly can spare any change, it'd be massively appreciated. But just a heads up, huge video on the channel tomorrow regarding the Great North Run. And if you're new around here, make sure you get down there and hit that subscribe button. Join the 45% of you who are already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos, because there's so much going on at the minute with Newcastle United, and we are now starting to slowly prepare to come back into the Premier League. And it's just about a week from now where we take on Barcelona in the Champions League. Starting off with a bit of negativity just so we can get out of the way, but there was a photograph that's been posted all over social media today which actually physically shows that Anthony Gordon, after the game at St James's Park against Liverpool, bearing in mind he got sent off in that game, he actually went up to Virgil van Dijk and started getting pictures with the Liverpool players after the game where we lost, you're talking, in the 101st minute to a 16-year-old. Now, I've seen a lot of mixed opinions from Newcastle fans towards this, and I think in the grand scheme of things, getting a photograph of a Liverpool player is not the most groundbreaking, horrible thing I've ever seen, but I would be lying if I said it doesn't irk me a bit. It does, and there's a couple of reasons why I feel a bit negative towards it now. I feel like he has to read the room. You've got to remember, Gordon was sent off for going in on Van Dijk. That was during the game where we already had a Newcastle player on strike, refusing to play because he wanted to go to Liverpool. Then you had a red card which directly changed the game, in my opinion, cost Newcastle 3 points. I think 11 players on that pitch would have beat Liverpool. Hell, we nearly drew against Liverpool and we were a better team with 10 players on the pitch. So if Gordon was able to play the full 90, I reckon Newcastle would have got at least a draw in that game. So when I look at the pitch after the game, I get that Liverpool is, of course, Gordon's boyhood club. I get that he probably wanted to say sorry to Van Dijk after the game. That's fair enough, but I feel like getting a photograph with a player, smiling and, showing up to the Liverpool players, I feel like it's a bit too far. Again, I know he's a Liverpool fan, but you are representing Newcastle United. You can clearly see it's this season. That's why he's wearing the new training top. Of course, Adidas is just teamed up with Liverpool this year. So when I look at the photograph itself, I wouldn't say it's the biggest thing in the world. I feel like Newcastle fans on the flip side are perhaps looking a bit too much into it. I've seen people calling for his head and people just saying that you want us to sell Gordon. Like, I can't say I want us to sell Gordon based on that photograph, but you also need to look at the evidence of his performances. 21 games, his last 21 games of Premier League, 0 goals, 0 assists. That is big. That's a big drought. And I know Gordon has been a selfless player up front during a crisis where we haven't got a striker, and I can't wait to see what he can do on the left-hand side. But I must make the obvious claim. Once Gordon gets back from this red card, his second suspension, you are talking in, 4 or 5 months? When he gets back from this red card, needs to start scoring or getting assists for Newcastle, has to bring the contributions in, has to start kicking on for Newcastle, because I don't feel like, although the start of this season has been good, I don't feel like his performances have been consistent enough. I think Gordon is definitely a player where he's either good, he's either bad. It's one of them ones where he's never consistent. You just need a good amount of games where he's able to kick on, able to contribute. And if he was to do something like this going forward, we wouldn't be arsed. It's the performances I'm arsed about. I'm arsed about the fact that the guy hasn't been able to score an assist in half a season for Newcastle. So I'm hoping when he gets back, he kicks on. But ultimately, it's a photograph of a player after the game. I'm not going to bash Gordon to death with it. How is Gordon supposed to be a better player at Newcastle, and how he's supposed to improve at Newcastle if all we are doing is critiquing every single thing he does? I don't like it, but I'm not going to whinge about it. I've seen worse things at Newcastle, and trust me, after the summer we've had, are we really just going to mourn on about a photograph after the Liverpool game? And speaking about this summer, Joao Pedro has actually came out on social media over the past couple of days during the international break and explained his reasoning on why he did not join Newcastle United this summer. And he put it as simple as, I want to be in London. Not that I want to go to Chelsea, I want to be in London. That's the main focus for him that summer. He didn't get the chance to do so in Brighton. He was close to London from Brighton, but he wanted to physically live in London and play for a London team. And then at that stage, he wanted to join Chelsea because of the history of their football club. The main focal point of that player turning Newcastle down is the fact that we are not in London. And of course, the player is entitled to make his own choice. But I actually feel like it's incredibly ignorant. I actually think it is. Now, the reason why I feel that way is because, well, he's turned Newcastle down because of the city and the background. But has Joao Pedro ever lived in Newcastle? No. Has he ever stayed in Newcastle? Probably not, unless it's a night in a hotel after a football game. So when you look at a player, and our players out there, because I think this is something that's a bit more common than you might expect, but players have to be turning Newcastle down because we aren't in London. I feel like it's sheer ignorance. Now, almost kind of looks down on our city, but our city's amazing. And I've seen an example from Richard Keys. I can't believe I'm quoting Richard Keys, but I've seen this example throughout history. Always got people going, well, why does Newcastle not have their training ground in London? Let me answer that question. Probably because we are from Newcastle. Why would we have a training ground in London? Just so players would choose to join Newcastle because we've got facilities in London. I don't want players to pick Newcastle because we're associated with London. It's exactly the players you don't want at this football club. I want players here who want to be here, who are proud to live in Newcastle, proud to represent Newcastle. And I don't want these players to come in because of the geography, history behind Newcastle and whether we're close to London or not. It's a load of rubbish. I've seen loads of people quote this, move the training facilities south. No, we will not move the training facilities south. We are staying in Newcastle because we're from Newcastle, and that's what this city means, and that's what the fans mean. We are such a local, well-brought-up community who will continue to thrive under a takeover, which has so far been successful. So when I see this rubbish, absolutely not. It's a shame Joao Pedro wanted to live in London. I can't blame him for it. I'm not going to criticise his choices for it, but I will argue for him and our players out there to completely disregard Newcastle because of where we are from, I think is ignorant. I think it looks down Newcastle as a city, and it's from people who have never been Newcastle before. I don't personally like it, but again, I can't choose what that player wants. Only get players that want to be at Newcastle United. It is what it is. We move on. But I was actually quite intrigued by how much Joao Pedro just wanted to live in London rather than wanting to be at Chelsea. And going back on topic to the international break, I'm going to be struggling going through this with the amount of players that represent their countries. Now, of course, as Newcastle fans over the past few years, we've got a bit more accustomed to seeing several of our players out in international duty. But this has to be the most selected amount of players I personally see. We'll go through them one by one. Of course, we talked about them yesterday with Nick Walter-Marte. Got off to not the best of starts. Got the unbelievable opportunity of starting up front for the senior German team, but a 2-0 loss to Slovakia hasn't put things off to the best of start for him. Bruno was able to score in a 3-0 win over Chile. Joe Linton, of course, is still just about injured. He's ready to come back for Newcastle, but he wasn't ready for international duty in case he did get that call up. Livramento, Gordon and Byrne are representing the three lines. Come on, England! And they're playing tonight, so we'll see how they get on. Wissa was able to score and get an assist against South Sudan. Of course, when I was making my video yesterday, they were currently 3-0 up, so I completely missed the Wissa goal, but he scored shortly after my recording. Tonali was able to drop a near man the match performance in his game. Alanga scored up front in a Swedish pairing alongside Gokares. Alanga, as a front focal striker, was able to score. Actually, what was a well-taken goal, by the way, and I have to say, if Newcastle gets in a situation when you've got the African Cup of Nations and they've got Wissa out on AFCON, I have to say, Alanga through the middle, Eddie Howe might get some ideas from that. I feel like if you've got Murphy on the right and then you've got Gordon on the left, Alanga through the middle, if you're not starting Nick Walter-Marte, that could work. I've got a feeling Alanga through the middle actually could be quite a good option for Newcastle, and certainly an option I feel like Eddie Howe should look into potentially if it got to a situation where we need to bring the strikers in there. But so far, mostly positive international break, and I say mostly positive. The main positive, no injuries. I have to say that's the most obvious part. No one is injured yet. Let's not jinx that, but no one so far has picked up anything where Newcastle should be concerned by. There's a lot of great experiences out there, but the amount of international players on duty, I'm actually struggling on the phone to keep track of them all. There must be 10 plus players out on duty at the minute. I'm just not used to seeing that many players out. I remember back in back in the old days, you're talking 2016, 2017, you saw maybe one or two players out. I remember watching Sissoko, I think it was at Euro 2016. He was like the only player at Newcastle that had any contributions that entire Euro campaign. So from one player, you're talking 10 plus now. It's certainly something we're going to get used to. But again, as a top team like Newcastle will do, we'll continue to progress, continue to branch out, and I've been pleased so far. I've been pleased with the performances. I can't wait to see how they get on against Wolves. And finally, walking away from this video, we'll talk about David Hawkinson, of course, the former Real Madrid executive. Got great experience in USC, the likes of Madison Square Garden. Coming in at Newcastle with, I would argue, more of a commercial background than actually being someone that's been quite hands-on with football teams. This is still quite new territory for him. When you hear about what he has to say, he wants to fill up that trophy cabinet, discuss his stadium decision briefly, and prefers St James's Park as being the magical players. Everyone is rowing in the same direction. And I have to say, behind the scenes, I think the main part before you even look at David Hawkinson, everything's about stability. Because I feel like if you were to look at Newcastle just somehow behind the scenes, you're missing key staff members and you're missing key areas where at times it's been a bit all over the place. You talk about Joao Pedro. We actually nearly missed out on signing him by 2 minutes because we missed a key document that needed to be submitted to the Premier League. So even just signing Joao Pedro on transfer deadline day, that was a lot harder than it should have been. And when you look at the situation Newcastle's in now, huge staff member to get in, someone who's got great commercial background, someone who's able to get a lot of contacts out there, and he's able to take Newcastle at the next level. And once you bring in the director of football alongside David Hawkinson, I'm hoping Newcastle United finally has the right staff members. I think the director's been the biggest part because he went from Dan Ashworth, who was good at his job but didn't want to be here, and then you went to Paul Mitchell, who wasn't good at his job at all. So you've had a real contrast in the two complete opposites of what you don't want as a director of football. So now we need to find the middle ground this time, someone who is good at his job and someone who wants to be here. That's what Newcastle needs to do now. And I'm sure over the next week or so, we'll probably have an announcement. I reckon it'll be closer than you think, but it's one of them ones where we just have to sort it out this time. This director of football has been a real headache for a couple of years now, so I'm hoping Newcastle finally finds the right individual and we can finally kick off and start to take off this season, because we've got a good team there, good set of players there, and although Newcastle may not have the better striker at the minute, we've got a better squad overall. I think our squad's miles better than it was last season. We just need to start scoring goals and we're going to be fine. But that's about it in terms of this video. Again, back tomorrow for the Great North Run. If you guys got any questions or anything you'd like to ask, feel free to jot it down below. Hope you enjoyed watching anyway. Let me know your opinions on Gordon. Let me know your opinions on Joao Pedro. Is the Gordon situation being drummed up over nothing, or do you feel like the players should be understand the situation a lot more? And what about Joao Pedro? What do you think about his comments directed towards Newcastle as a city? Take care, and we will see you all in the next one.